Thank you, Dan. Thank you, John. Thank you, Tom Grumbly. Let's thank this panel and ask Undersecretary Johnson to come on down to the stage. Thank you, fellas. Very well done. Now, as Secretary Johnson comes down, I just want, oh, you're here. Hello. We have, in our suite, we have wind power that did 10,000 megawatts last year, 25,000 megawatts in the past 3 years. Solar PV coming on like gangbusters, very fast now. We have concentrating solar power, which all of its enormous potential at the gigawatt level, and starting to see the first round of commercial projects this year. Even pre-commercial or commercial getting financed out west and around the world. We've got OTEC with Lockheed Martin and others working on that, ocean thermal energy conversion. We've got other ocean technologies. We've got hydropower still with incremental megawatts coming. We've got geothermal, which is scarily below our feet, and we haven't even learned to tap it yet. I call that the $3 billion a year R&D program America never started. That's what it's going to take to crack that one. And we've got biomass, and we've got biofuels, and we've got the whole range of other technologies that are our first cousins: energy efficiency, smart grid, the transmission build-out, so many other advanced vehicles, fuel cells, hydrogen. All these technologies come together into a clean energy future that we have a vision for. And we argue about how soon it can happen. We argue. Can it happen in 10 years, 30 years? I would pose to you to think ahead 300 years. Are we going to be burning oil, gas, and coal in 300 years? Most people would say not. So what will be powering society as we know it then? I've got to believe it's our ability as engineers and scientists to tap the natural energy around us to energize our society on this Earth and or other planets. It's the energy of the universe that we are tapping and learning. This is so much more difficult than just digging up some high BTU dirt and burning it. Folks, combustion is old. It's the industrial age. This is the technology age. And we've got some of the best scientists and engineers on Earth rejoining DOE. I'm old enough and have been around long enough to have been here in 1977 when DOE was formed. And my firm at the time actually did the first DOE budget way back then. And I don't mean this to criticize all those who work so hard in their careers at DOE, but frankly, it hasn't been the source of dynamic, young energy and science and research that we had all hoped it was until this year. My personal opinion, this is finally, after 30 years, DOE hitting its stride with Secretary Chu coming in and invigorating us and motivating us. Here's a Nobel Prize winning scientist at the head of this thing. This is supposed to be the R&D program of our country, and finally, it's happening. And Arun Majumdar heading ARPA-E, and now Dr. Johnson as Undersecretary running many of these big programs, the science, the engineering, the RD&D, and all these technologies. I could read her resume, which is amazing, previously at Johns Hopkins and Duke and fellowships and more awards than you can imagine. But I'd like you to welcome her here, not for what she has done, but what she has been hired to do, and give her your sense of enthusiasm to encourage her to do a great job. Please welcome the Undersecretary of Energy, Christina Johnson.
Thanks very much, Mike, and no pressure on that. It is a great time to be at the Department of Energy, and it's an even greater time to be in renewable energy. I'm pleased to be back. We had an opportunity to spend some time together in New York. That was only in June. I'd just recently been confirmed, and I was thinking, what possibly could I talk about 7 months later? And maybe that's my academic background. You're always trying to figure out something new in the next year. Well, boy, do we have a lot of new things to talk about. And I want to say a little bit about where we've been in this journey the last 7 or 8 months, and particularly the funding that the Recovery Act, which all of us as taxpayers has helped put energy at the forefront of the administration, the agenda, the things that we need going forward to ensure that we carry out the President's goals. which are to ensure, if I run this right, that we're at the forefront of innovation, global leader in innovation, that we take care of energy and provide energy for energy security while reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So it's great to be here. Let me say a little bit about the past, then we're going to go into the future here. So a big part of what I have to talk about is the bipartisan piece of legislation that we call the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. This has provided $36 billion of direct funding to the Department of Energy that has leveraged with loan guarantees over $100 billion of funding from private sector government to go after the kinds of things in renewable energy that we're going to talk about. More importantly, our economy is growing again after 2 years of recession. Businesses are beginning to invest again, and tens of thousands of Americans are going back to work. In spite of the New York Times front page on Sunday, I want to tout a few of the successes that we've all had opportunity to share in. The U.S. solar industry grew by almost 40% in 2009 and added 18,000 new jobs. In wind, early on, the U.S. wind industry was concerned that we may have a 50% drop in terms of development of new programs and projects. And yet we installed last year nearly 10 gigawatts, or the equivalent of, in capacity, it'd be 10 nuclear power plants, but of course the wind doesn't blow all the time, so about 3 nuclear power plants, again, creating thousands of new jobs. And we learned, once again, thanks to the Recovery Act, that America's geothermal industry saw a 46% uptick in confirmed new power projects. And the Recovery Act was oversubscribed in areas including the smart grid, ground source heat pumps, hydropower, combined heat and power, and biorefinery and biofuels. There can be little doubt that the Recovery Act Treasury grants, in lieu of tax credits, the so-called 1603 program, along with the Advanced Manufacturing Tax Credit 48C program, were big contributors to the expansion of these important industries. You may recall, too, when the Recovery Act legislation was passed nearly a year ago, that we did receive $36.7 billion. And it was to jumpstart the clean energy economy, or what Secretary Chu calls the industrial revolution of our century. Now, as of December 31st, we set certain goals. We wanted to have at least $30 billion selected for specific projects. We got $31 billion out the door. And we wanted to obligate more than $20 billion of that. So you select, then you negotiate, and you obligate. We obligated $23.2 billion. So we're on a roll. And as I said earlier, the Recovery Act has provided $100 billion or more in terms of support for energy projects. Now, these investments were targeted at small and large businesses, and I want to take a few examples. One is Johnson Controls. They're able to use $300 million, well, let me not exaggerate, $299.2 million, to open a Michigan plant that is now being retrofitted to produce lithium-ion batteries for plug-in hybrids and electric drive vehicles. And there are other companies at the other end of the spectrum, many of us who are here that have been small business owners. 130 small businesses benefited from almost $2 billion in grants and $840 million in loans. And rapidly emerging companies are getting a well-timed boost as well. We saw earlier this year that 123 batteries went public, and now we have Tesla and Solyndra, 2 loan guarantee recipients that are poised to join A123. A123 was started on a Phase 1 Department of Energy Small Business Innovative Research Grant. And speaking of the so-called SBIR program, we changed some of the requirements this year using the Recovery Act funds to emphasize commercialization and job generation in the clean energy area. We broadened the solicitations, and we were rewarded with receiving 970 Phase 1 proposals in September, of which we were able to fund only about 140 of those. Our next solicitation that went out and closed in December attracted 1,872 proposals. So it's a very exciting program. It's one that I would encourage all of you to participate in, or if you're eligible, of course, you have to be a small business under 500 employees, but you'll be seeing other embellishments on that to help cross the chasm or the valley of death, as Dan talked about. Recovery Act is funding has helped create demand for energy-efficient products, help